Hello, everyone. Hopefully you've completed the introduction for the lecture component of the course. I've just seen that. And this one is more for the laboratory, more specific, although I did touch on the laboratory in the lecture introduction. All right. So not to reiterate too much, again, the materials you're going to be needing for the lab are these. This is the laboratory workbook by Katie Solari, Catherine Elizabeth. No one calls her Elizabeth, or we call her Katie. Katie Solari. This is her biological anthropology. This is the laboratory manual and workbook. All right, so make sure you, if you're looking for that one, searching for it, place those numbers in, or yeah, and remember this is the second edition, not the first edition. So I had the first edition right here. There it is. Right, this is the one you do not get. This is the one with the snow monkeys on it. Everything's been changed from this edition to this edition. Now, I normally don't discuss, why I choose the books that I do, but I remember when I was a student, I was always interested. So I'm like, why? How come the professor is choosing that book, and why are they doing it? Well, here's the reason. I've taught alongside Katie Solari for a long time at Diablo Valley College. Before she moved into University of California, Santa Cruz. And while she was teaching for us, she was actually finishing her PhD thesis on how to teach labs. This is her PhD thesis. Right? This is what came out of this. This is her PhD. She wanted to learn how better to teach labs, from a really good theoretical educational perspective. And what dropped out of it is this piece. And after it went through a couple of revisions from the very first one, which you saw to this one, it came out as a pretty darn solid text. Particularly if you're teaching a course like we have to, where we're doing on an online format. Many books that are out there right now really require a professor there because there's too many disconnects happening. I think she's got a solid, well-written piece, sort of standalone that you can learn very well from it. So that's why we have this book. And again, it's available out there, ebook, hard copy, whatever that you want, and for rent. Right? Now, the second book is this one. This is Robert Hayson's book, The Story of Earth. This one's relatively reasonable price. I mentioned it before. It's like $18 retail, which I wouldn't even pay. I'm not like you. I never buy books new. So you can, just chop around, probably get this thing for maybe 60% of the price, maybe 10, 12 bucks somewhere. But this one you're going to need, fairly quickly. Now, the laboratory manual, which you looked at, which I just showed you, by the way, you're not going to need that for a couple of weeks. Okay. I mean, I'm don't procrastinate too long, but don't freak out. If you can't get it right away. This one, a couple of weeks from now, you'll really be hitting it because in module one, we're really not going to be utilizing this one. This one, though, right off the bat. Okay, so this is going to be a go-to book right off. So if you can find it, an e-text, or for rental, an e-rental, it would be great if you could pick this one up right now because we're really going to start with this one right, like on the very first day. All right. Now, as I mentioned in the lecture component introduction, this laboratory sort of section, is only worth 100 points out of a 400 point total, which makes it fair because it's only a 1 unit section of a 4 unit course, right? The lecture is a larger component. So I sort of scale it down work wise and also point value to sort of reflect it. And I don't expect it to affect grades one way or the other. You'll get the same GPA one way or the other if these things were taught completely separately or not. The advantages of teaching them together are that I can really tightly weave the information to where the laboratory supports everything that's happening in the lecture, right? So the readings in the laboratory reflect everything that's going to happen in that lecture to get you the best possible grade on the lecture quizzes, right? That's really the goal. So this whole idea of kind of putting the lab and lecture into one course, this is the first term that we've done this. I've done this before at other colleges, and it's worked out very well. And the reason that we've really done this is because I've been lobbying for it, and I know Jessica Amato, my co-teacher in this department, I've been lobbying for it too. We think this is going to be a better outcome for you. All right. Now, of these 100 points, and I mentioned this before, broken down into like 20% quizzes, uh, you know, um, roughly, 30 to 40% of your grade is going to be in small laboratory assignments, of which there will be 8, and those laboratory assignments will be coming out of that manual that I just showed you, right? 8 of those. And then, I believe the last third, the 35 points, is going to be coming out of a project in which you're doing, which is an Earth Timeline project. On the very first lab, of this one. If you go down below this, you look below, I'll be discussing the timeline, what it takes to do it. It's really not a very difficult thing, and actually it's actually very fun. But I want you to be aware of this, that while you should be working on it progressively through the course, the best source of information to help you for that is always me. So when you're working on the timeline and you're filling it in and you find ideas, then hit me up by the phone. Say, Mercer, I'm thinking about putting this in the timeline. What do you think? How do you think this would fit in? Well, I can help you place it, right, and contextualize it so that you produce a really great, working document. From a teaching perspective, it wouldn't help you to tell you what to put in it, but I'm willing to give you feedback to say, hey, no rocks over there. You've done a good job, or hey, there's a few things you may want to think about. Okay, so always make sure that when you're moving to the lab, that I remain your lifeline on this one for any issues, sort of whatsoever. Okay, other than that, that's it for the lab. Except for the final point about how to turn in your assignments. And I wanted to do this last because I think sometimes that it's when you're listening to information, it's the first things that you hear and the last things that you hear, the ones that sort of stick the best. And because of submitting your assignments is so important, here we go, the last thing. So anytime you see an assignment within the modules and there's a point value to it, that means something has to be done and turned in that module. Okay? So many of the labs that you see will be a lab without any points, and that's just discussion. Maybe working on the timeline project, maybe some instructional video, maybe some lecture I put out to help you do the timeline. And then you'll see things, they'll say lab, like lab 2 or lab 1 or whatever, and it'll be a point value, like 4 points. And that means that you have to submit it, in that assignment window, in that web page. And what will happen is there'll be a regular text processor, word processor, the Canvas processor in there, which you can type in the answers to the lab questions or whatever I want you to do in the lab, and then you can submit them, or you can produce your own Word document, and just save it, and then upload it within that assignment window, and it comes right to me. Okay, so that's the best way to get sort of these things submitted. Additionally, if you can't figure out how to use it or something like that, you're freaking out, don't worry about it. You can just send it to Canvas to me or my own campus email. I mean, I don't care one way or the other. I see everything that comes in. It's just better if it goes in that way. It's easier for me because it's kind of like I have to search for missing things that are out there. So try to turn it in that assignment window within what you're working on. Okay. Now, as far as your grades for all this sort of stuff, for those of you that haven't sort of worked on Canvas before, over on the left-hand side, you'll see a grades. Click on the grades, and that'll show you your point value for each assignment. It won't show a letter grade because this course is based really on points. So whatever you get for that assignment, you'll see points, building up across. And to figure out what your grade is anywhere within the class, you just sort of how many points possible to here, and you take how many points you have and divide it. If there's any issue with that, you have any problem with it, let me know. I'll calculate it real quickly anytime to help you out. All right. Now, for the labs, I do want to say something about the grading and how you're going to be graded. So these labs are worth 4 points each. This is really how it goes. Right? If you sort of send a lab in and a few of the questions have been done and they're sort of okay, not really great answered, but only a few questions done, you get 1 point. Now, if you do all the questions and most of them are sort of wrong or not really on point, you didn't really put any effort into it, no, wrong, you get 2 points. Now, if you do all the questions and yeah, they're good. Maybe 1 or 2 is not a really good answer, whatever, maybe 3, 3 points. Now, if you do all the questions, they all look pretty good. You don't have to be stellar. I mean, I'm not looking for a grand book on something, but if you hit it and it's pretty much spot on with what the answer should be, you get 4 points. On average, most students don't lose points on during the labs. Most students get 4. I mean, I've had very few students that have gotten a 1 or 2. I had very, 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 very few. And mostly because I discuss it ahead of time like this. So this is not where you're going to lose points within the lab. I think all of the labs you're going to probably do really well. The quizzes aren't going to be hard. In fact, most of the time I will draw questions of what you've already done in the labs. So if you've done the labs, you probably already answered the question that will be on the quiz. And for those of you that don't do the labs and you try to do the quiz, that means you haven't done that question, and that means you lose out. That's when it's the monopoly, when it begins the domino effect, when you go downhill. So as long as you stay up with the labs, you're going to do great on the quizzes. And lastly, the timeline project. The one I want to say about it is don't procrastinate on this one. Make sure you kind of go with the flow of class when you're learning new information as we keep moving forward in time. Keep adding things of interest, in your timeline. I'll explain, how you're going to do that, what those elements of interest should be. Keep building a timeline as you move through the class so you don't get, sort of out of time. We got other classes going on. You're not, in a couple of hours, you try to put something together. You don't want to do that. So it's really keeping pace with the project all the way through. And I'll put reminders, throughout the class, and we'll actually have little sessions every now and then. You'll see in the learning modules, you'll see an assignment that we'll be doing like a timeline poster, work day, sharing some ideas. I'll put more examples up there for you and helpful videos that you can draw information on to fulfill this assignment and get whatever grade that you like out of this course. And I really, I always hope for everybody. I really want you guys to do well. So let's get to work on that. All right.